Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Jerusalem, Israel, and we continue with Calling All Sparks. As always, before we begin each class publicly, I have to state the following words by Rabbi Feld. The following pages contain my research, cooperative research with others, my humor for medicinal and educational purposes, and at its core, the research of some serious scholars. The following was not written for either publication or sale, but merely a personal private letter that attempts to answer a bunch of questions and sometimes attacks on the parts of friends and foes. Therefore, not everything is linked to its source or footnoted. Also, creative license was taken to sort of kosher research for myself and others. Just a personal note, not prepared for a public document. Not prepared for a public document. Hope you enjoy the read as much as I enjoyed writing it down for y'all. Okay, so we continue with the Flavians and the origin of Christianity. This is part 2. Now, again, before I get into this or we continue this, I just want to say, I understand for the usual viewers, this is like, what's going on over here? This is necessary. Honestly, I'd rather not do this stuff, but these things need to get out there, okay? And so we're almost done. We are next week. We are going to finish with the Flavians, and then we're going to discuss the 12 tribes, meaning the 10 lost tribes and the unification, which needs to happen before the coming of Mashiach. Afterwards, I'm going to conclude with some of my own words, which I highly recommend. So if people have gripes or anything, just listen till the end and we can speak after that. Also, if you're sharing these videos with people and you get, I'm getting a lot of positive emails from people with, asking questions. That's fantastic. And other people with, less positive. But again, all these things are expected. I know why I'm doing these things. I have full conviction as to why I'm doing these things, and these things do need to come out. That's between me and my Creator, as should your walk be as well. Nevertheless, this is happening, so let's get into it. When open-minded scholars started working on the study of the Gospels and looked at its text in terms of how these were composed, while understanding its structure tells you about who wrote them and why they were written, right? Once you start taking it apart. These texts were not independent Jewish texts, but they were created as literary works using classical literary models. For example, in the Jewish Secrets of the New Testament of Rabbi Feld, here, this is the book. You want details on things? Here. Jewish Secrets Hidden in the New Testament, okay? I'll put a link to this book underneath, okay? I'm not getting anything from this. I'm just saying if you want your answers, there's a whole book on this. These are just bits and pieces. So from this book and other studies, you can see how the Sermon on the Mount, for instance, was created line by line from much older writings. The authors had access to the Roman libraries at the time. By exactly taking Essene writings, that's about 60%, with other 40% directly from normative rabbinic traditions, the sermon was woven together. Thus, the food of the New Testament is literally a copy or copy and paste of much earlier Jewish wisdom carefully edited together by a literary team working with Essene texts. Available to whom? That's right, the Roman archives. So it's kind of funny when a missionary shows a Jewish person the sermon and pushes him or her to convert because it's so cool. Well, dude, if the good stuff is Jewish, y'all should perhaps join the Jewish biblical heritage, right? So lay off of us, please. The Talmud teaches, based on, as always, the Torah, that the good of all the nations have a wonderful share in the world to come, without any necessity of officially becoming a Jew, a Hebrew. And this is what I've been teaching for a while right now. You don't have to convert to Judaism in order to have the world to come, in order to partake in eternal life. There's a place for everyone as long as you let go of idolatry, which is what I'm attempting to do right now. Again, you could be a Noahide, but if you hold on to these false doctrines, false religions, false prophets and Messiah and everything, it's just going to drag you down and there will be nothing after death. That's it. So again, not done. We're only in the middle. We still have things to explain, and answers will come. I promise you that, okay? Patience. I understand this is, like I said from the beginning, The truth shall set you free, right? But before it does, it's really, really going to make your blood boil. And a lot of people's are boiling right now. Okay, it's all part of it. It's good. It's good. Okay. Really, mamash, many missionaries have thus presented the sermon as a pull to the assimilated Jew to convert. Look how nice the sermon is on... look how nice the sermon is, and therefore he should convert to their brand of New Testament. They do the same things with all the other verses, showing a mere fragment of context, because this is really how the things are. If you look at all the prophecies written down within the New Testament, and then you actually read the Torah, the Tanakh, in Hebrew, Jewish, nothing corrupt, you'll see that none of the prophecies that are actually written there in the New Testament, taken from our prophets, are like what they said at all. Or again, 30,000 and whatnot variations of that. So like we said, showing merely a fragment of the context, often changing words and tenses. And if you change the word, the whole sentence has a different meaning. And obviously then you have the translations which lose their meaning altogether. Simply put, if you put it back into context with correct translation and tense, and voila, all of a sudden, all the false claims go down the drain. They will translate the exact same words correctly all over the Bible when they have no theological axe to grind. If we expect that this New Testament is the testimony of witnesses, we've got a major problem then. We got a whole bunch of different witnesses saying a whole bunch of different things. How would that hold up in anything? We actually have 4 anonymous documents. They were not written by the named people on those documents. To this, the Catholic Church freely admits to merely placing the names on them to give more esteem in the eyes of the highly uninformed masses. And again, I say, and you have to ask this, if God discusses, he says that you will, the remnant, as in you will be small, the absolute minority. There's 2.2 plus billion Christians in the world, not only Catholics and Protestants, and from all the variations. And yes, the Messianics are in there too. Why? Because at the end of the day, y'all believe in the same thing, Jesus. That's it. That's what separates everything from everything. So 2.2 plus billion. Are you the minority? No. So by default, even if you read your words according to the New Testament, it is false. It is untrue. You got to look at these things. Again, logically, think of this. This is simple church tradition that the Gospels are so named according to Mark, according to Matthew, and so on. But not because they knew the authors. They openly say they didn't know. It was a general Flavian project. This is the points of origin. Which exact Flavian working group trying to produce a literature to unite Rome is a mystery. Which group from the Flavians, but we know where it came from. So this idea that the Gospels are reliable testimony is patent nonsense. Why are the Gospels called the Gospels? That's a critical question. The word gospel in Greek is evangelion, and it means good news of military victories, particularly. Whose military victory are we celebrating here in the Gospels? Well, it seems to me that we are celebrating clearly the Roman military victory. Because as long as you say that this is the word of God, they won. Because these events, the battle at Gadara, the battle at the Lake of Galilee, the successful battle of Jerusalem, these are battles that the Romans won. Why are the Gospels celebrating battles that the Jews lost if these things were written by Jews, supposedly? The fact that the Gospels are known to us in Greek and they're not in Aramaic or Hebrew is just evidence for their authorship. They were not written by any followers of Jesus who would have surely spoken Aramaic, and if they had been fishermen or simple folk, they would not have had the literary skills to write them down anyway. Only the collaborating wealthy pro-Roman, pro-self-survival Jews could have done it. Turncoats, backstabbers, rats. In what Greek scholars call dirty Greek, meaning not classical but polluted with Hebraisms, Jewish Greek, if you will. If we look closely, there are actually clues within the Gospels, again, see the book, that points to who the true authors were. A lot of the Christian literature advocates turning away from the Jewish law and obeying Rome. Well, this fits perfectly into Nazi-like Roman propaganda purposes. And then you have, in general, the portrayal of Jesus as the peaceful Jew, who is wandering around in what is depicted as a sort of pastoral scenes, talking to fishermen and farmers and so forth, when in fact, this is a war zone. Judea is a war zone. Was, is, why not? And you ask yourself, why is it not portrayed as a war zone? I mean, they really had it down pat. They kept saying, Jesus saying, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Just give it. Yeah, no problem. Which is basically in response to talking about money. To whose benefit would that be? Who would benefit from Jesus saying that? Okay, we understand that now. I hope. It's so blatantly obvious, thank you, Rabbi, it's so blatantly obvious from the perception of Roman characters in the Gospels that all interpreted in favorable light, they are pro-Roman. They do not depict the Romans as the forces of evil. Even, what's his name, Pontius Pilate seemed like an okay dude. This man did nothing wrong. You sure? Are you guys sure? But if you actually look at history, who Pontius Pilate was, he was a murdering beast, a psychopath. But everything that I read in the guy, he seems like an okay guy, a guy who's really in the pursuit of truth. They reverse that. It's the Jews who became the forces of darkness. It's very striking that various passages in the Gospels refer to the Jews as some people separate from the heroes of Jesus and his disciples. The Jews did this, the Jews did that, those evil Jews. The Jews are those who object. The Jews are those who try to thwart the divine plan. Jews know that the divine plan cannot be thwarted. Now that gives us a clue, certainly, to who were the true authors of this book. They are works of literature created by people who are trained in Jewish literature, but whose values are pro-Roman. You have to see, this is how the whole thing is combined, and still have a heart and empathy for their suffering brothers and sisters. Got everything in there. There's something for everything, for everybody. Remember the Vichy French, who likewise collaborated with the Nazis. They had to sentence the partisan Charles de Gaulle as a criminal because he fought against the Nazis. They knew that Germany was not supposed to rule France, but they also wanted to survive and prosper through it all. They still loved their fellow Frenchmen, though, sort of. The Romans wanted to promote anti-Semitism, and so they arranged the story of the beloved man-god JC to appear as if the Jews had brought about his death. Because of this, the Jews would have to suffer anti-Semitism throughout history. And again, you wait for my closing arguments in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, everything is coming to light. Everything will be answered. So, accusing the merciful Hebrew nation of killing a god, that's really what you're reading. Come on, what came for the last 2,000 years? Who killed Jesus? Who killed God? Really? Who killed God? That within itself is a crazy question. But of course, it's the Jews. The start of many blood libels, so this was a piece of work that could not have been done except by a fairly established literary team, such as the literary team that was in Rome, actually writing the book of Josephus. This means that it was written by a literary team, and it was written as one of the attempts to give prominence to the favorite Caesar, which the Gospels also do. So, it is extremely likely that the Gospels, as a form of epic design to magnify allegorically the Roman Caesars, which is also written at the court of the Flavian Empire. But the JC story takes place many decades before the Flavians came to power. Why would the Flavians create a work about a Jewish Messiah that wasn't even from their own era? As we've discussed already in these teachings plenty of times, the Gospels were very precisely backdated 40 years. JC's ministry was started in 30 CE, exactly 40 years from the destruction of the temple. His ministry ends at Passover, 33 CE, which is 40 years before the end of the Jewish-Roman War, which occurs at Passover 73 CE, with the famous battle at Masada. If you guys are in Israel, you got to go see what went down. Just look at Masada, even Google Masada, and see how the ramp they had to build and their determination to kill every last Jew. Because how dare you stand up to us? How dare you question us? Again, if there are no survivors, who's going to tell the tale, right? Dead men tell no tales. But we're still here. We're still alive. And we're calling a spade, and I'm using nice words right now. The Gospels are backdated into the period of Pontius Pilate. Good guy, right? That is to say, before the First Jewish War, which is to say, in the Julio-Claudian period. But this is typical of Flavian literature. It is a Flavian technique to come out with something, say, look what I found, this predates a thing, therefore everything that happened in this book is true. No, it's a trick. You're being had. You've been had. What they do is they backdate the story into the period of their enemies, namely the Julio-Claudians, and so generation after generation of Christian scholar and even secular historians go hunting in the Julio-Claudian period for the origins of the Gospels, and yet they can't find it there. Why? Look at where the documents came from. They don't really find any answers then, it says. There are allusions in the Gospels to the destruction of the temple. The most reasonable answer to that is that these texts were written after the destruction of the temple. That is to say that the Flavian period after the change of the dynasty. This backdating of the story of Jesus 40 years earlier from the time the Gospels may actually have been written, which explains why many of the prophecies of JC came true within exactly 40 years. Well, I mean, except if someone actually asked me this question, because I said, Jesus said that all the stones over there in the temple, not one will be standing. And yet, if you go today in Jerusalem, today, now, you see there's beyond the foundation underneath which the Romans built on top to try and cover it up, there's still plenty of structure over there. So, straight up, what Jesus said was a lie. What do we do with false prophets? How do you know if a prophet is false? If what he says doesn't come true, there's at least one, which makes everything else null and void. But let's continue. What does this all add up to? The thing of most significance is the research by Joseph Atwill in his book, Caesar's Messiah, which suggests that the Gospels were actually created as works of Roman propaganda at the end of the Roman-Jewish War under the reign of the Flavian emperors, that is, Titus, Caesar, and Vespasian. And if you end up worshiping Jesus, what you really end up doing is worshiping Caesar in disguise. This may have been how the Flavians finally got some of the Hellenized, we'll call them the ignorant, secularized Jews to worship Caesar as God by giving them JC as a Messiah, more to the Romans' liking on a Jewish platform. I got plenty to say about more things. Don't you worry. It's like I'm almost excited, and yet we still have to eat our vegetables before dessert. But is there any actual history to this character? Where did he really come from? The mystery begins with his very name in Greek. Jesus means Savior, and Christ means Messiah. This didn't strike me as something you would call a young child. These two words are already important within Judaism. Before JC supposedly existed, major biblical figures to a Jewish Greek-speaking populace would already be called Christ, which again means anointed. God even called Cyrus his Mashiach, his anointed. Is Cyrus Messiah? No. Any person in charge is God's anointed. God has many anointed, which again means anointed. Every priest and king was anointed. Who anointed Jesus? Right. Their ears would already be acclimated to accepting this title. He's anointed. Who? Where? It has to be a public thing. And the whole of the people have to say, yep, that's the guy. Otherwise, no. So, it isn't just a unique name of a single person who just suddenly popped up. What do we actually know about, Jesus, the man? Yeshu cannot be historically defended. Cannot be historically defended. No historian of that time heard of it. There's no evidence that we can extend to that particular JC. Now, again, I'm going to say something here right now. To that particular JC, I have to say some things right now, even though they are out of order. Okay? Was there a Jesus? I think there were several, and I will get to actual hard evidence, which I will share with you all. Okay? But again, there were several of them based on also what the sages say, based on archaeological findings, based on what is currently today in the Israel Museum on display. I'll tell you some crazy stories, okay? But for real. So what are they talking about here? This guy that they built up, that is not the guy at all, because that guy also is not who you think he is. In other words, there's no way that you could flip this. It doesn't look good in any way, shape, or form. You're better off letting it go. Again, wait till I'm done with the whole thing, let it all marinate, and then you could come to your own conclusions. Let's continue. So when you actually set out to investigate the historical Jesus, as in the guy that you're actually supposedly is here from the Gospels, right? As opposed to the Christ of faith, you very abruptly enter a void where you would be correct. You find that whereas you might imagine the core details of Jesus are readily known and accessible, you actually discover there's no such thing. Further, there had never been an archaeological evidence of Christ that had ever been discovered. You cannot find an established and incontrovertible biography of the multi-composite of pagan characters called Jesus at all. It doesn't exist. You enter a strange twilight zone of early Christian belief. Where did this come from? How could something so big have developed from nothing? How? Look who's writing it. Look how they mixed it. What we have here is not a movement that's grown on the a creation of legends of real flesh and blood man, but instead the development of a religious movement around the idea of a man. That's what okay. It is the idea, right? What is it? Batman, be more than a man, be a symbol, right? Same concept over here that was used. Exactly in beat with the host of mystery belief over action salvation cults. There were many of them, many. What about the Shabtai Tzvi? He believed he was Messiah. He had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. What did he do in the end? He converted to Islam to save his own butt. Okay, so you had plenty of these cults at the time. It was that time that believed in a spirit of a saving pagan Messiah-like creature, a mix of what was a growing trend that felt Judaism was cool, refreshing, advanced, and humane with pagan man-god fantasies. Mishmash of everything. Combinations of pagan and Hebrew material was all the rave. There isn't even an actual physical description of what JC looked like anywhere in the Gospels. They also contradict one another on very crucial issues. I've had all these questions, and I asked supposedly people who had their doctorates and all these things. They had no answers. Where do you get these things from? I still have questions today. I could ask any Christian, what did he mean when he said this and this and that? No one has an answer for these things. The presentation of the JC character is somewhat of a composite of many messianic leaders of the time. Here we go. Many messianic leaders of the time, most or all of whom came to a bad end, usually by crucifixion, because that's how they did away with everybody back then, because crucifixion was a Roman punishment for seditious activity. And the penny dropped. The cat is out of the bag. The penny dropped that Yeshu, the one you read about in the Gospels as a human being, never existed. In all of this, we're dealing with literature. It's an idea. We're not dealing with actual history. So the answer is no, there is no history to this character of JC. It's entirely a literary creation. What the Romans did was they saw the Jews' reliance and belief in prophecy. So they said, okay, they want a prophet, let's give them one of ours. It seems that the construction of the literary character JC, the Roman authors borrowed religious concepts not only from Judaism, but also from other gods and religions that they knew. As we discussed in the all the pagan religions, they all had this God impregnated a virgin, man God was born, died for the world's sins, was resurrected. How many cultures across time, way before Jesus, the story of Jesus came around? Some scholars have noticed the similarities between the story of Jesus and ancient pagan mysteries. Again, this is the earlier teaching. Thus, it would speak to all of the people of the empire, because the empire was filled with pagan religions. Like, oh yeah, that could totally happen. Something for everyone, if you will. In ancient mythology, we find the whole strain of thought of so-called solar mythology. Many gods are taking on solar attributes because as agricultural communities become more important, the sun becomes a big focus for most obvious reasons of planting and harvesting, like we discussed. The sun is then personified, so now we have a male sun god. It becomes a religion in many parts of the world. Christianity usurped a tremendous amount of sun worship. Hey, why are Jews so mad that, Christians stole a lot of our stuff? They stole a lot of stuff from the other. Well, the others don't exactly, they're not exactly around anymore. This December 25th birthday was in fact the winter solstice. This is really the birth of the god of light. December 25th actually is the end of a 3-day period of when the sun stands still. The sun appears to be dying as the day becomes shorter, as it is the lowest point in the sky. Then it rises just a bit after 3 days, right? From our perspective anyway. It dies after, and then 3 days is revived, a common pagan myth based on the sky, not on the earth. And so let's put that in there and everyone will call it good. Thus, the sun is reborn. At that point across the ancient world, there was this form of experiential and philosophical spirituality in these mystery cults or mystery schools. And at the center of these schools, you would find a mythos, which was it was initial myth from a symbolic myth, which would help people who were going through the initiation process coming to this spiritual awakening. If you see anything like, it's this is where you get led, this is where it takes you. This knowledge is called gnosis, or with the gnosis. Gnosis. And what you see in these myths is the elements that will later become the Jesus story. So let's ask the question, is Jesus developed from pre-existing literary characters? Jesus has certain episodes in his so-called life, and each one of them can be traced to a prior representation of that time. If you look at the elements which we found in the pagan mystery school myths, you find the story of a dying and resurrecting Son of God who's born of a virgin, has 12 disciples, turns water into wine at a wedding, and it brings a new religion of love, is accused of heresy or provocation by the authorities, is put to death by crucifixion, and then if you want to commune with the God-man, then you take bread and wine, and then you can come to eternal life. All of this is, of course, Christianity. Sounds crazy when you say it like that. Like, who would believe such a thing? Easter itself is a long pre-Christian celebration of the resurrection of spring from the death of winter. This is an ancient shamanic rite you'll find all over the world. That you go through a ritual death where you get reborn, but you're reborn as an awake being. You are now a new creation in Jesus. So you died just to your lower nature and woke up to your higher nature. Yeah, in Judaism, this is supposed to happen every single day. You can find the authors of the New Testament also took from Jewish narrative. There you go. Traditions and events to further make it a new attractive religion based on ancient traditions. They simply do a copy of Elijah, and it's a very dramatic ascension. The Elisha-Elijah cycle, these are two Jewish prophets. One followed on from the other, right? Elisha took the mantle from, I think even literally from Elijah. One followed from the other, which have many of these, the story elements found in Jesus. For example, there is a multiplication of a food miracle. There is a raising of a dead miracle. Both Elijah and Elisha raised two boys from the dead. Both became the prophets, Jonah and Habakkuk, mind you. So there's a raising miracle from the dead and multiplication of food. There is a water miracle, and there is ultimately an ascension to heaven miracle. And by the way, if a lot of people don't know this, turning water into wine, it's not a really big deal. There are incantations that could be done. The Baba Sali was doing it publicly up until he died a few years ago. So, and again, people are like, he just turned water into wine. Then you have the Ashkenaz rabbis are saying, it's better if you don't use this because it might make people lose their minds, just like other stories when, oh my goodness, he turned water into wine, he must be God. No, people can do this even in this day and age. Big whoop. The Roman New Testament simply makes a claim later, backed by horrific murder on those who dare to disagree. You want to push an agenda? Control both sides. Is this fulfillment, or is this simply copying of a useful theme that you can see where they use the Hebrew Bible characters and scriptures as a blueprint to create this new one? This is also, just so you know, this is what any kind of propaganda, any kind of psychopaths, sociopaths, okay? They have to infuse some truth, but even if they infuse just 1% truth and 99% could still be a lie, but they're going to focus on the truth, and you're going to say, look, he gave the truth, he gave the evidence, so to speak, therefore I'm going to listen and follow blindly because he spoke the truth on that one thing. This is how they do it. But the way the adversary works, he'll give you 99% truth. Absolutely. Here's look at all this truth. Wow, so many truths, but that 1% lie, that'll make you not reach the finish line. So you think you're going there, but you're not. And that one thing, that's Jesus. That keeps you in there. You think you're free, but you're not. Like I said, I'm going to back everything up. Patience. Always more to come. So the whole concept of a lot of the ethics of Christianity actually were around before Christianity. Do unto others as you would have, do unto you, and all this stuff, all these halachot of loving one another. Oh, I say to you, you say to me what? That if you look at another woman's toe, it is as if you sinned? Yes, we know this. It's part of our halacha. If you have negative thoughts, if you have immoral thoughts, even if you don't look, it is considered a sin. What, he made it up? Who are you following here? This is what the sages were saying. The same sages that he was ridiculing publicly. Anyway, Jesus didn't make this stuff up. Many of the other aspects of Christian ethics, many things which we might like to applaud as very good aspects of Christian ethics, can be found in the Stoic philosophy of Rome. You had that too, which, by the way, was exactly the philosophical and ethical school promoted by the Flavians. There is little that is original about Jesus, if one separates from his words advice that was in the interest of the Roman imperial family. All that you have left are snippets of widely known philosophies, truisms, and concepts that came directly from prior Hebraic literature. Again, all this from the Mishnah, all this from the Talmud, and all other writings that preceded all this stuff. Everything is there. The reason many scholars are now convinced there is no historical Jesus, which seems unreal to people who are not familiar with the idea, is a combination of things. First of all, there's no evidence for a historical man which stands up to proper scrutiny. Second, the story of Jesus is full of these motives, which come from the pagan mysteries. And third, the third reason is because in the early Christian movement, there's two types of Christians. Certainly by the 2nd century, which can be thought as the Gnostics and the literalists. What marks out the literalists who will become the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Church is that they've got a historical man. Yes, okay, yes, this guy, and here's what happened. But again, why? What marks out the Gnostics is that they see it allegorically, and their great heresy is that Christ Christ fake is didn't come in the flesh. Now, the victors write history. Remember that. The victors write history, and the history books have been written by the literalists, and all of the tradition about the Romans trying to torture and suppress Christians. These traditions are correct. They definitely persecuted the messianic, militaristic Christians, and they certainly would have frowned on the Gnostic, independent thinking Christians, but they would have been classified as Jewish rebels, not as a new religion. This we actually have history of, and they're not Christians, nor were they following Jesus. They wanted to bring Messiah, and this you could read the stories of Rabbi Akiva and Bar Kochva, again, another false Messiah of that time. So there was nothing. They were not pacifists, not by any means. Their purpose was to kill as many Romans as possible. Definitely not turn the other cheek, which also goes against what God said in the Torah. Hakam le'ogecha shkem le'ogo. If someone is coming to kill you, wake up before them and go kill them. Turn the other cheek? Sounds like a contradiction to God's words directly. The Roman pacifistic giving to Caesar what is Caesar's, that group would have been promoted, definitely, because they're pro-Roman if you think about it, which makes it perfect for the Roman Empire. It's a fascist empire after all. It's giving a very simple message. Just believe this. That's it. In what world? Apparently in this one, because if you just believe and yet do nothing, then what happens? I don't know how they got in there, James, right? Faith without works is dead. It's in your face. They're laughing at you. You don't have to transform. You don't have to go through the authorities, through the bishops, through the state. Ultimately, resist not evil. The dominions are from God and must be obeyed. My kingdom is not of this world. It's the perfect thing for them to pick out, and that's exactly what they did. Our scholars agree that the Gospels are complex literary creations, drawing from both pagan and Jewish traditions. But Joseph Atwell leads the scholars and points out something that was hidden in plain sight. That the Flavians wrote passages directly into the Gospels, which show that they were the authors. Again, the Catholic Church, so called to the second process of the New Testament construction over 150 years after the Flavians, admit that they, the Flavians, were the authors. One of the most famous prophecies that Jesus makes is about the coming of someone he refers to as the Son of Man. Now, many people believe that he's talking about a second coming or later on a third coming of himself, and many people believe that this is going to occur at some point in the future. Well, the fact is this coming of Jesus has already occurred. Jesus makes very specific prophecies as to what will happen when the Son of Man makes his visitation. He refers to three key events. 1, the Galilean towns will be crushed, and they were. 2, Jerusalem will be encircled with a wall, and it was. And 3, and the temple will be razed, leaving not one stone on top of the other, which now we know is factually untrue. He also stated exactly when this individual will come. He says that the Son of Man will appear before the generation that is alive and listening to Jesus' words pass away. Now, the Jews of this era, a generation is 40 years. And so the only individual that could possibly be the Son of Man that Jesus predicts is Flavius Titus. Flavius did destroy the Galilean towns. He did encircle Jerusalem with a wall, and he raised the temple and left on top not one stone. And yet again, the whole foundation is there. And he did this within 40 years. All of this within 40 years. Here is the Jesus prophecy come to pass, sort of. Josephus recorded that no matter how Titus tortured the Jews, they refused to call him Lord or God. So, to circumvent this stubbornness, because we do not call anyone else God, Yareg v'bal yavo. We only call God, God. And if it's anybody else, then take my life, happy to go. But no way, Jose. So to circumvent this stubbornness, the Flavians wrote the Gospels, in which a Son of Man was predicted to come in the future. Titus fulfilled these prophecies and became the Son of Man. So you end up worshiping Titus without knowing it. Right? Who cares? Yeah, but it's Jesus. No, it's not Jesus. It's Yeshua, because that makes a difference. And yet your mind isn't the same thing. You think you're pulling a fast one over on the authorities if you're trying to convert, right? But guess who's pulling a fast one on you? Guess who pulled one over your eyes for 2,000 years now? Also, it was made ambiguous so that you could get on board with a passive Messiah, but not necessarily a God-man. Oh, you don't want to go there? Don't worry about it. Just believe and we'll call it good. Something for everyone. To further support this fact about how the Flavians originated Christianity, any open-minded seeker of truth can point to the Roman Catholic Church's earliest saints, known as the Christian Flavians. Ever noticed that one before? They did succeed in creating a startup religion. Again, if they are reading the same gospels that you are reading and supposedly you say, no, the Catholic Church, they gave you your books. You're reading the same books. You think the same guy is God, God-man, Son of God, the Lamb and whatnot, or even Messiah. So if you think they're wrong, they're reading your books and saying, what are you doing? The same thing. You must see this. They did succeed in creating a startup religion. They did this. Roman texts, funding, and might kicked off a bunch of new groups, but it did not succeed in putting it all together because the Flavians lost power before full implementation. Only with the Flavians' Constantine picking up the ball did it reach completion. The Council of Nicaea 325 CE and Council of Constantinople 381 CE, etc., made it all fall into place. Here, they replaced Sabbath for Sunday, replaced the Jewish biblically based calendar for a Roman one. Marcion and Tertullian had pagan ideas, man-god, etc., rejected by earlier church fathers, became dogma under Constantinople, God and Jesus being of the same substance, and of course you have the Trinity over there. Actually, Trinity and Homoousios were voted on and accepted in Nicaea, only later ratified in the vote at the Council of Constantinople. The above two twisted fellows, Marcion and Tertullian, look them up, gave PR to the Trinity. Marcion coined the term New Testament, probably and then old one, right? Yet he was expelled from the then nascent church, not because he hated Jews, but for such things as saying a God of the Hebrew Bible was like the devil of an evil force, a demigod. Then you have a good God. You have the good God of the New Testament, and he also contributed to the writings of his version, that is of Paul, right? Again, Rome needed to unite the empire, reduce the gods, because who cares, right? That's where's the funding go? Reduce the gods and return power to appointed rulers away from local pagan priests. Varro, Roman historian, mentions 30,000 operative gods being served. 30,000. You're going to break the bank that way. People sacrificing so much, leaving little to tax. 153 plus holidays a year, killing productivity as well. Ooh, 153, jump on that one. Montanelli, Indaro, Romans Without Laurels, New York. Pantheon, book 59, page 129. There's a reference for that. You heard of, who is this? Zoroaster's Persian religion. Zoroaster's Persian religion. I haven't, but he has. User-friendly to us in their attempts to convert us. Well, almost. They too acclaimed their guy was our long-awaited one with numerous biblical proofs. They divided the cosmos long before Christianity with a good God versus a godlike bad Satan God situation. Sound familiar, right? No, it does. Getting back to the Flavian family, which is connected to early Christianity in a number of unusual ways. So many members of the family were recorded as having been among the first Roman Catholic saints. That's what you do. You place your mishpacha in power. These include Flavia de Milita, who is either Titus's sister or his niece, and there is an inscription honoring Flavia for donating the land that became the first Christian catacomb. Flavia Domitilia was the first Christian saint. Her son, Clement, is recorded as having been the first Roman Catholic pope after the apostle Simon, as in Shimon Kephar, as in Simon Peter. Again, we'll talk about that too, don't worry. In addition, there were two members of the Flavian household staff, Nereus and Achilles. Both of them had churches named after them in the very earliest Christian diocese in Rome. There was a Christian theologian whose name was Titus Flavius Clement of Alexandria, and he's the one who actually described the first Christian symbols. He said they were the anchor, the boat, the fish, the olive branch, the star, and oddly, these are the very symbols that the Flavian Caesars used on their coins. Plenty of Messianic congregations use them today, especially the fish. The final connecting point between the Flavian family and Christianity is that in the 4th century, Flavius Constantine made Christianity the state religion of Rome. He made it official then. The military achievements of Caesar were important to all the Romans. If you go here to Herodian, for instance, Herod the Great built Herodian. There's a whole new thing over there. You see, everything was dedicated to their militaristic victories. They wanted to impress the Caesars. It's on the walls. It's everywhere. This is their show of force. So again, what was the military achievements of the Caesars are important to all the Romans. So certainly the Flavian Christians, the group that the Roman Catholic Churches states were the first saints of the religion. And they would have known the identity of the Son of Man that Jesus predicted, who would crush the Galilee and encircle Jerusalem with the wall and raise the temple to the ground. This, of course, was Titus Flavius. It seems if a person knows how to uncover them, there are actually many clues pointing to the Flavian origin of Christianity, and perhaps the most intriguing one that Joseph Atwill uncovered is a secret code that the Flavians used in their documents, which enabled him to make his startling discovery. So we're going to stop here today, okay, for this week. Stay tuned for next week is the 3rd and final installment of the Flavians and the origin of Christianity. Like I said, afterwards we will be discussing the 10 lost tribes and what is going on and how this is related to them, which could very well be you. So please, I beg of you, at least listen. And if you want to hate me, okay? I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of him. And that's why I got to do what I got to do right now. Those that need to come out will come out. And those that will not, by all means, stay where you are. It's all good. Then afterwards, closing arguments, and we will cover and uncover everything. I'm excited. Are you excited? Let's hope so. In any case, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of the week and have a Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.